I split a green sapling with my belt knife this morning.
Before I even thought about lighting a fire, checked the pith color, smelled the sap.
The ferro rod was sitting right there in my pack.
Dry, ready, perfectly modern. I didn't touch it. See, out where I live, you learn fast that knowing how to read something beats owning something every time.
Waterproof matches, piezo lighters, weather apps, they all fail eventually.
One of these tricks involves the wrong thing to do with your water bottle, and it might save your life. And number 2 is why old-timers laughed when they saw someone unpack a brand new sleeping bag in the rain.
If you want the whole list, stay with me.
Subscribe if you're new here. Let's count it down. Number 10, the spit test. Before I was 12, an old neighbor of mine pressed his thumb to a flat piece of granite beside the fire and shook his head. Too cold. He waited 10 minutes, then flicked the tip of his finger, just barely grazed his tongue first, and touched it to the stone again. A sharp, fast sizzle. He nodded and laid the meat down. I've never owned a camp thermometer since. A drop of saliva on a flat stone tells you exactly where your cooking heat is within 2 or 3 seconds. Not approximately, exactly. A slow, lazy sizzle means the rock is warm but not cooking hot. A fast, aggressive snap that evaporates in under a second means you're in the right zone. A flat pop with no vapor means the stone is too dry and too hot. You'll char the outside and leave the inside raw. The cadence, the sound, the speed of evaporation all encode temperature range that took engineers decades to put into a digital readout. Instant read thermometers foul with smoke residue. Batteries fail in the cold. A cracked stone from thermal shock will ruin your morning and your meal. You already own the instrument. You were born with it. Number 9, reading the underside. I got caught in a bad storm once because the sky was perfectly clear. Bright morning, no clouds, no wind. I should have known better. The clover in the meadow I'd walked through was telling me everything. Silver-white undersides flashing as every leaf curled upward. I walked right past it, looking at my phone. Many broadleaf plants, clover, silver maple, lamb's ear, curl their leaves before rain arrives. The stomata are responding to rising humidity that hasn't broken into visible clouds yet, sometimes hours ahead of what any app will show you. That curled leaf is a biological barometer, and it's already calibrated to the conditions on the ground, not conditions at some weather station 20 miles away. A 2 to 6 hour warning is enough time to change your camp, pack your gear dry, or choose a different route. The plants knew before the satellites did. Now, those first 2 tricks have something in common. Notice what that is because it matters for everything else on this list. Both of them use the environment itself as instrumentation. The spit, the stone, the leaf, none of it is gear you carry. It's observation you practice. Old-timers didn't pack redundancy in equipment. They built redundancy into their attention. Modern campers do the opposite. When the app fails or the battery dies, there's nothing left to fall back on. The next few tricks take that same logic and apply it to the hardest problems: staying dry, staying warm, and not going hungry. Number 8, the bark boot. I ruined a good pair of leather boots in my 20s by leaving them too close to the fire. Woke up to stiff, cracked leather and a sole that had started to separate. Lost $100 and 3 days of comfort because I was in too much of a hurry to dry them right. Here's what I do now. Peel dry bark shavings from birch or cedar and stuff them inside the boot, sole to toe. Leave them overnight. By morning, the bark has wicked the moisture out from the inside, faster and more completely than any fire can manage from the outside. The cellulose structure in the bark holds water like a sponge, and the terpenes released from cedar actively suppress the bacteria and mold that cause that sour boot smell. Boot dryers need an outlet. Silica packs saturate in a genuinely wet camp. The tree that got rained on all day is the thing that dries your boots. Number 7, the smoke clock. An old trapper I knew used to say, "Read the smoke before you eat." I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. Fire smoke behaves predictably with the time of day because temperature inversions shift as the air warms. Before dawn, cold, dense air sits low and heavy. Smoke goes flat and rolls sideways, hugging the ground. Once the day starts warming, the column rises clean and vertical. Erratic, twisting drift before you'd expect wind usually means a front is moving in. The trapper used this to decide when to break camp. Flat smoke at dawn meant the air wasn't ready. Pack up in wet, cold conditions and you'll regret it. A rising column meant the day had turned. I've sat in my bedroll an extra hour watching smoke tell me things my watch couldn't. The fire's not just keeping you warm, it's telling you what to do. Number 6, the wrong knot. I watched a man lose a $200 hammock because he tied a perfect bowline to a dead branch. The branch snapped, not the knot. The knot held exactly as designed. That was the problem. It concentrated all the stress at one fixed point until something gave. Old loggers and mountain men used friction hitches for dynamic loads. Game hanging, shelter ridgelines, pulley rigs. A friction hitch on green wood is designed to slip slightly under overload rather than hold rigid until something breaks. That micro-release absorbs shock, distributes stress, and protects both the rope and the branch. Modern gear catalogs teach you load-rated knots. They never teach load management. The knot that slips a little is the one that never breaks. Here's what I keep coming back to with all 6 of these. Modern gear is built to resist conditions. Waterproof, windproof, breakproof. These tricks work because they flow with conditions instead of fighting them. When gear fails, battery dead, zipper jammed, sole delaminated, the person inside it has nothing left. The mountain man's fallback is his understanding of what's actually happening around him. The next few are going to make you question some things you spent real money on. Number 5, the bottle trick. I promised you early on that this was coming. The wrong thing to do with your water bottle. Here it is. When you're without a filter and you're looking at water you're not sure about, the instinct is to drink from the fastest moving stream you can find. Clear water, moving fast, must be clean. That thinking has put people in serious trouble. The right move is this. Fill the bottle and bury it halfway in wet riverbank soil for 2 to 4 hours before you boil it. Clay and organic layers provide basic mechanical filtration. The bottle cools the water, slowing bacterial activity. Sediment settles. In clay-rich soil, you get passive mineral filtration on top of that. Then you boil. This is not a replacement for a proper filter. Always boil the output, always. But it dramatically reduces pathogen load compared to drinking straight from the stream. And unlike a filter straw, it doesn't clog in silty water and can't be ruined in the field. I learned this from a woman in her 80s who'd lived off the same mountain watershed her entire life. She never owned a filter. Your bottle isn't the solution, it's the first step. Number 4, the ash soap. A bear got into my pack on a week-long trip once. No soap, no hand sanitizer, nothing. 3 small cuts from clearing brush and a Dutch oven with 3 days of cooked fat in it. I scraped the ash out of the fire pit, added water, and let it sit until it thickened into a paste. Hardwood ash mixed with water produces a mild lye solution, potassium carbonate activated by water, pH around 11 to 12. It kills surface bacteria, cuts through grease, and is safe on skin when diluted. Use hardwood only. Oak, maple, hickory, softwood ash from pine or fir carries resin residue that can irritate. The Dutch oven came out clean. The cuts stayed clean. The thing you burned last night becomes your soap this morning. Number 3, the uphill camp. I spent a January night in a creek bottom because it looked sheltered, low, flat, protected from wind. I woke up with ice in my beard. The group camped 30 feet up the slope on a small bench and the trees had none. They'd slept warm. I'd been smarter about my gear and stupider about my sight. Cold air is dense. It drains downhill like water and pools in creek bottoms, valley floors, and low draws. The phenomenon is called katabatic drainage, and it's real enough that a creek bottom camp can run 10 to 15 degrees colder than a site just up the slope. You also get more ground fog, heavier frost, and wetter mornings down low. A sleeping bag rated for 20 degrees performs like a 10-degree bag when the site selection is right. You don't buy that upgrade. You earn it by putting your camp 50 feet uphill. These last few tricks aren't really tricks at all. They're decisions made before you ever unpack anything. The mountain man isn't fighting his environment or buying protection from it. He's reading it well enough to let it work for him. Nobody who grew up knowing this stuff thought of it as survival skills. It was just how you paid attention. Number 2 is why the old-timers laughed. And number 1 is what makes all of this actually work. Number 2, the wet wool secret. Here's what they were laughing at. Not the gear, not the person. They were laughing at the idea that you could buy your way out of a wet night. A damp wool blanket still insulates. That's the whole secret, and it's worth understanding why. Wool fiber has a natural crimp, a physical curl at the microscopic level, that maintains air pockets even when the fiber is wet. Lanolin, the natural oil in wool, is water-resistant and antimicrobial. Wool absorbs up to 30% of its weight in moisture before it even feels wet to the touch. And as it absorbs that moisture, it releases heat through a mild exothermic reaction. It actually warms slightly as it gets damp. Down loses nearly all its insulating value when wet. Synthetic loft collapses under prolonged moisture. A $500 sleeping bag in a wet camp is a cold night. A wool army blanket in a wet camp is a survivable one. I still keep a folded wool blanket under the seat of my truck. Not nostalgia, not sentiment, purely because it works when nothing else does. Number 1, attention is the skill. Go back to that green sapling I split this morning. The ferro rod sitting untouched in my pack. I wasn't making a philosophical statement. I was just paying attention to what the wood was telling me before I committed to a method. Every trick on this list is the same thing. The spit test is attention to heat. The leaf underside is attention to plants before a storm. The smoke clock is attention to fire. The bark boot is attention to how moisture moves through material. The uphill camp is attention to how cold air behaves at night. Every number was the same skill applied to a different surface. Modern campers invest in gear as a substitute for attention. The mountain man invests in attention as a substitute for gear. These weren't tricks to the people who used them. They were just what you noticed when you slowed down long enough to look. When we stopped passing this down, we didn't just lose techniques. We lost a way of moving through the world. The ferro rod is fine. Just don't let it be the only thing you trust. Pick one thing from this list. Practice it before you need it, not in an emergency, on an ordinary morning. Which one would you bring back first? Leave it below. I read every one of those comments. Knowledge weighs nothing, needs no charging, and doesn't fail in the rain. Take some with you.